Guys, even though I'm not going to be in class today, your goal is to review for the quarter one exam, which will be on Monday the 23rd. It will be 25 multiple choice questions worth 50 points, and it will cover chapters 1, 2, and what we've done so far in 3. Please make sure that you do bring your Chromebooks on Monday, as we will be taking the quarterly on the Chromebooks. So I wanted to touch upon a couple things you want to make sure you review before Monday's exam. You want to make sure that you do know the area, perimeter, and circumference formulas from chapter 1. We learned circles, rectangles, squares, and irregular shapes. Vocabulary, look through all of your vocabulary from chapters 1, 2, and 3, as well as postulates and theorems. Chapter 2, we did our conditional statements, our if-thens, the converse when we flipped the hypothesis and conclusion, and our biconditionals, which were our if and only if sentences. So review those, as well as the 2 laws that we learned in chapter 2, the law of syllogism and the law of detachment. You'll also remember in chapter 2 we worked a lot with vertical angles, complementary angles, and supplementary angles. So make sure you look at those complement and supplement problems. Back in chapter 1 we also learned the distance formula, the midpoint formula, and also how to find an endpoint when given the midpoint. So you might remember we had working backwards to find the other endpoint. We did that using either an algebraic method or also using a pattern, kind of just observing the numbers and continuing that pattern to find the other endpoint. Back in chapter 1, we also had inductive reasoning, which you'll recall was reasoning based on a pattern we observed. So observing something, then making a conjecture about that inductive reasoning process. And of course, we would prove a conjecture was false by using a counter example. Also, chapter 1, we did collinear, coplanar, parallel and skew segments. So I'm going to brush up on those. We did the segment addition postulate, which was if we know 2 segments, let's say this is 2 units long, this is 5 units long, we can add them to get 7. Okay, but you will see some problems on the quarterly that have algebra. So maybe 2x plus 5x minus 2 equals 70. Okay, we would add these expressions and set equal to the total. Same thing with our angle addition postulate. Definition of an angle bisector, you'll remember an angle bisector is a ray or a line that divides an angle into 2 congruent angles. Remember, the definition of a midpoint is a point that divides a segment into 2 congruent segments. And then you do want to touch up on what we just took our quiz on yesterday. So the parallel line theorems, postulates, and the converse theorems. And of course our vertical angles theorem too. I think there's some on the quarterly that might look like this. We have a pair of vertical angles. Let's say this was 2x and this was 10. No, let's make it 100. Okay, we know that vertical angles would be congruent. Therefore, they have to be equal in measurement. So x would have to be 50. Remember, sometimes they will also put another variable in there, let's say maybe y, and ask you to find y. Remember, to find the other variable, you can use a linear pair. So these 2 angles together have to add to be 180. So 180 minus 100 would tell me that y must be 80. So today in class, while the substitute is here, your goal is to complete the chapter 1 and 2 cumulative review worksheet that the sub will be handing out. You are needing to show all work to support your answers. And then your assignment is also to check those answers on Google Classroom and come ready on Monday for your quarter 1 exam. So on Google Classroom, here's what you'll see at the very top. It says quarter 1 review materials. You can see everything I've already talked about. Here are the answers to what you are completing. There is no work shown for these. You will need to have work to support your answers. I also put up, in case you would lose the review sheet, another copy, and then extra practice problems as well. Then I'm also going to put up the link to that online extra practice site that you could also use to help study for Monday. So make sure you come prepared, and I will see you all on Monday.